Welcome to Cutoff Genes, the podcast that helps you find your truth using nothing but DNA. I'm Julie Dixon Jackson, and I'm a genetic genealogist, henceforth known as a Gen Genie. Hey, today's episode is special. A few weeks ago, I had an interview with a gentleman named A.J. Jacobs, who is an author, journalist, lecturer, and self-described human guinea pig. He's written 4 New York Times bestsellers, a couple of which I've read, that combine memoir, science, humor, and a dash of self-help. I first discovered AJ listening to his short-lived podcast called It's All Relative, which was genealogy-based. And he'll talk a little bit about it in the interview, so you'll know why it was short-lived. And in his latest book, Thanks 1,000, he endeavors to thank all the people responsible for his morning cup of coffee and travels far and wide to do so. Great read. AJ is a really interesting guy, and I had a fun interview with him, and I think you guys are going to love it. So let's go ahead and listen to the interview with AJ Jacobs. AJ Jacobs, welcome to Cutoff Genes.
Thank you for having me, Julie. Delighted to be here.
AJ, I discovered you from a podcast called Twice Removed. And I listened to every episode. Can you tell me how that came about?
Sure.
Okay.
I was working on a book about genealogy and genes, and the head of that, of a podcasting company came to me and said, "We're interested in doing a show in this area. Do you have any ideas?" And my book research was all about how everyone on Earth is related,
right?
And how it's like one big game of 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon.
Mm-hmm.
And you're Kevin Bacon, I'm Kevin Bacon. We're all Kevin Bacon.
We're all Kevin Bacon.
We're all Kevin Bacon. That's the bumper sticker right there.
Yep.
So,
that's good.
So I said, well, what if we took a celebrity or an interesting person and then figured out how they're related to another interesting person, like, could be 4th cousins, could be 16th cousins, twice removed, could be whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But we would talk about their ancestors and then, surprise them and introduce them at the end. And they liked that idea.
Right.
And so we worked on it. The good part is I'm super proud of the episodes.
Mm-hmm.
The not as good part is it turned out to be way more difficult than any of us could ever imagine.
That was my next question. I can imagine the research that went into it for a start.
Oh, yeah. Well, you might have noticed there are 5 episodes, and
mm-hmm.
that's all they're ever going to be.
Right.
It was just too much. I mean, they had 5 full-time producers working on it for a year and a half. Doing this incredible genealogy. Because first you had to track down how the 2 celebrities were related.
Right.
And we'd like to do ones who were somehow connected. So
mm-hmm.
it wouldn't just be random. It wouldn't be like, Tina Fey and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Although that would be interesting.
That would be interesting.
But we wanted them to be somehow relevant to each other. So we did Ted Allen, who is
mm-hmm.
He's a host on the food show, the Food Network, Chopped. So we wanted to find someone in food he was related to. It turned out he was 14th cousins with Julia Child.
I mean,
so we did not get Julia Child, but we got her nephew who had written a book with her.
Right.
And then the stories about it were all about their ancestors and how they related to food. So there was one, Ted Allen actually had a Confederate soldier who was a great-grandfather, and we talked about Confederate coffee because the Confederate Army had no access to real coffee because of a naval blockade.
Mm-hmm.
So they had to survive on fake coffee like chicory and roasted corn-based coffee. And I believe, I'm not a historian, but it seems to me that's why the North won the war. I mean, we had coffee.
Makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah. How are you going to win a war if you're not caffeinated?
Yeah, seriously.
So anyway, that was the premise. And it was in some ways it was wonderful to work on. In some ways it was extremely stressful.
I can only imagine. I mean, just doing this is hard enough for
Well,
me.
I love what you do because you definitely have cracked the code. Yeah, don't, interview someone interesting, do some research, but don't devote a year and a half to one episode.
Right. Yeah. Wow. Although I think they're classic, and in fact, I'm probably going to go back and listen to them again because they were so enjoyable. A question, and I think I know the answer, were the celebrities that were connected, could they be connected by marriage as well?
Yes.
I thought so. Okay.
Because at this point, we cannot, some of them have to be in-laws. We call them cousins-in-law.
Right.
But it's always better blood, but marriage too. And we did some we did some DNA work. I remember Jean Grey, who is a singer and a comedian. We had her do a 23andMe test to figure out, because she had like a crazy mix. If it were a pie chart, she had like 14 slices or something from all
really
over, which we loved. But some of them were through this other the sites like guinea.com or Wikitree, which are, as you know, sort of crowdsourced family trees, where hundreds of people are working on the same family tree, and they turn into these they're not trees, they're forests. So the biggest one is 125 million people on Genie, all connected on the same tree.
Right. Yeah, that's crazy. That's overwhelming for somebody like me.
It is overwhelming, I think, for any human being.
Yeah, I guess so. It's not just me, is it?
I mean, it's wonderful in one sense, because one of the things that really attracted me to genealogy in the first place is this idea that, we've always heard, oh, we're all one big family. That's what you teach you as a kid. But now with DNA testing and with these amazing massive trees, you can actually see concretely how you are connected to everyone on Earth. So it's kind of, in one sense, the simplest idea, and in another, it's like super important and profound.
Yeah, it is. It is. I want to talk about that more, but I want to go back really quickly. So your 5 producers, were they all genealogists?
We had a couple of professional genealogists who were working remotely.
Okay.
And we had people at 23andMe Heritage who were advisors. But the producers themselves were all from radio, with not much genealogy, because they are, a lot of it was about storytelling. Like, you had to find the story, and I learned a lot about how, because I write for print mostly, I'm a book writer.
Right.
So, and it's, even just thinking of weird sound effects to add, like, that's not something that occurs to me when I'm writing.
Right. That makes sense. So I noticed that most of your themes have to do with connection and humility.
Oh, well, that is a lovely way to say it, and I agree. I humbly agree.
Humbly. Thank you very much.
I am the most humble human being ever.
I absolutely believe that.
Yes.
That's so
I am
fantastic.
The king of humility. But yeah, I love both of those themes, and the connection one especially. The genealogy book was all about how we are one big family, and not just humans. If you do a family tree for real, it goes back to our 1.1 billionth great-grandmother or father. I don't want to assign gender, but this tiny little, the first living cell, which lived right by underwater volcanoes. And every life form on Earth comes from this one cell.
That's crazy.
Not just us, but like ferns and guinea pigs and you name it. So I love that idea that family trees, if you do a full family tree, it's not just humans, it's everything.
Yeah, that's great. Let's talk about the book a little bit. I actually listened to it because if I sit down to read, I fall asleep because that's the only way. Because I can only read when I'm relaxed. So I listened to it.
I'm a listener too.
Yeah, it's easier for me. I can go about my day and still read something. So hey, bonus.
Right, exactly.
So
that's how I listen to your podcast.
Well,
so I'm walking to and from work.
Yes, I can't do anything without having podcasts in my ears. So I've listened to all podcasts all the time. Okay.
And by the way, I do listen to you on double speed. So right now I'm very thrown off by how slowly you're talking.
Oh, really? You listen to me on double speed? That must be terrifying because I talk very fast already.
Well, you do. It's hard. It's a challenge. I mean, I listen to all podcasts on double speed, but yeah, you are a challenge. Sometimes I have to go to 1.5 speed.
Yeah, I would think. Sometimes when I listen back, I'm like, did I have coffee? Why am I talking so fast? I don't realize it at the time that I'm doing it. But, oh well. And you and I certainly have a different sound. You're a lot more relaxed and thoughtful in your delivery, I think.
Oh, all right. Well, I'll try to speed up and be less thoughtful.
No, never be less thoughtful. Thoughtful.
Oh, okay.
Thoughtful,
I'll try
good.
To be fast and thoughtful. Good.
All right, fine.
All right.
No, I like it. It's perfect. So let's talk about It's All Relative. The book you were just referring to. Can you tell me about how that all came about?
Sure. That came about 4 years ago. I got an email, very strange email out of the blue. And it said, "Dear AJ, you don't know me, but I'm your 12th cousin." And I thought, of course, the next line was going to be, "Please wire $10,000 to a Nigerian bank."
Sure.
But it turned out it wasn't. He was a legitimate researcher. He lives on a kibbutz in Israel, and he's one of the many people working on these huge mega family trees with not just thousands, but as I said, millions of people. And I was immediately fascinated by this and by the revolutions that are happening in genealogy. And one of them, of course, is the DNA revolution, which has opened up mind-boggling possibilities. And then these massive family trees, and also the amazing things you can search on newspapers now. Yeah. I mean, our ancestors have no privacy left. You can find like whatever you want about them.
Indeed.
In these small town newspapers. Yeah. So I immediately said, this has to be the topic of my next book. And that's what I did. So it became this sort of part memoir, part guide to this new revolution in genealogy, and part adventure. At the end, I tried to throw a family reunion for every single one of my 7 billion cousins.
Right.
And we didn't get 100% turnout.
How many did you get? What was the turnout?
We got 4,000 in New York City, and then an additional 10,000 around the world because we had simultaneous. I cannot
awesome.
Come on. Yeah.
That's amazing. I love it, and I love humanity. So before this 12th cousin from Israel called you or wrote to you, did you have an interest in genealogy?
I did. I do love family history, and I feel I got lucky in that I have some really crazy, wonderful ancestors, like a peacock salesman, a guy who was a blackmailer in the Teapot Dome scandal, and my grandfather, actually, I feel he is a fascinating character. He was a lawyer, and my favorite fact is in the 60s, I guess it was, the early 60s, he started a program to bring African students to study in the United States.
Really?
And one of the African students that he brought over was named Barack Obama Sr.
Shut up.
So I take full credit for Barack Obama. See, and I happen to be a fan of Obama, so I don't take any credit for any Scottish immigrants who came, or Swedish immigrants who came over for the current president.
Right.
But I'll take full credit for Obama.
Attaboy. I would too. Trust me. And then what about DNA? Did you, before doing this, did you have an interest in that?
Well, curiously enough, I wrote a book about health about 8 years ago.
Okay.
So I did 23andMe very early on.
Oh, okay.
But mostly for the health side, not for the ancestry side. Mm-hmm. And then there was a while where the FDA took away the health findings, and now they've got them back.
Right.
But so yeah, I did know. I was an early adopter of the DNA test.
Right.
But not as much. And for this book, I really dove into the ancestry portion of DNA testing.
Yeah. I think it's amazing.
And I needed your show while I was doing it. Your show started too late.
I know. Although there are probably a lot more knowledgeable people out there to guide you.
I don't know. Well, I think we have mutual friends or mutual people we admire, like Cece Moore was a big advisor.
I love Cece.
She's fantastic.
Yeah, she's amazing. Love her. She's been very supportive in my journey too. So.
Good.
Thanks, Cece.
Can I just tell you one thing about Cece that I love?
Please.
Because a lot of the book is about these stories, how DNA testing has changed people's lives. And as you know, they come in both varieties. Sometimes they are wonderful, and sometimes they are news you do not want to hear. Mm-hmm. But Cece told me about one case she has of he's a meteorologist in Texas who is adopted, and he found his biological mom. And what was interesting was they were on totally different sides of the ideological divide. He's gay and married to a man. She was evangelical Christian, super conservative. Mm-hmm. But through this bond, by meeting, they have come to understand each other. She has come to accept him, and I think that's DNA testing at its best, when you are able to bring people together through this miraculous technology, and they're able to, because there are the other. I got emails like I took a DNA test, and now we found out my biological dad is not my presumed dad, is not my biological dad, and now no one is speaking. Ugh. So it can go the other way. But I like to focus on the ones that turned out more happy, happy endings.
Yes, those are nice to focus on. I've noticed that too, as far as the ideological aspect. A lot of the times when I'm researching for an adoptee, and I find one of their parents on Facebook, for example, and it's very clear what their values are, and because I know the person I'm helping so well, I know exactly that they're probably opposite, and I usually just send them a link to that page and say, here it is, and then have at it.
And have you heard any reports back?
You know what? I haven't. I mean, not from those people.
Right.
I get more reports back from lately, because I've lately evolved more into doing the contacting for the adoptee as an intermediary, because I find it's sometimes it's more comfortable for both to have somebody kind of like soften the the initial connection. But I never used to do that. And so I kind of just would give them the information and wish them luck and send them on their way.
Well, this is amazing. Can I tell you you probably heard it or maybe read about it in my book. My favorite story that I covered of the adoption and DNA was these two women who were born in Korea. Mm-hmm. And they were both adopted in the West, one in the United States, one in France. And when they were like 28 years old, they had a mutual acquaintance who was on Facebook and said, it's kind of weird how similar you two look, like same freckles, same everything. And they saw each other and like, wow, that's weird. Turned out they had both been adopted on the same day from Korea, and they took a DNA test. They were identical twins.
Yeah.
And what was amazing is they tried to contact their biological mom, and unfortunately she was not interested. She denied it.
Right.
But what I loved is that, as one of them told me, she said, I feel like I have 5 moms already, 5 other moms. I have my mom who raised me, my twins' mom. She was an actress, and she had a manager that she called a momager.
Uh-huh.
So I love the idea that family and DNA are not the same thing. Family is much broader.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. Yeah. Very true. That was I think they made a documentary about those 2 girls, didn't they?
Exactly, yeah. I forget what it was called, but it was great. I highly recommend it.
Yeah,
Korean,
I'll look it up and I'll put a link on it to the listeners listeners. Also, I thought it was very interesting how different their personalities were. Did you notice that?
Oh yeah, well I mean one of them told me it was like she was sort of the upbeat one, and one was just a little more reserved.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like an experiment. I have fraternal twins, but I went as part of the book. I took them to the Twins Festival in Twinsburg, Ohio, which is every year thousands of twins. And not just twins. You got the triplets, and the quadruplets are like the superstars, and maybe even a quintuplet or 2. And they all converge and have this big festival where, you have to wear the same clothes and you play games, and it's hilarious. But anyway, like all these scientists go to this festival to study identical twins. How are they? What's nature and what's nurture?
Right.
So they were like a science experiment of their own.
Right. We've been talking about nature versus nurture a lot lately. Do you have a specific feeling about it?
It is 57% nature and 43% nurture. I'm just kidding.
I'm like, how do you know that?
It's incredibly complex.
Dang.
And I don't know the answer, but I love studying it and thinking about it and watching my kids and how different they are.
Yeah.
And, I want it to be a lot of nurture, because I think that makes a fairer world. Like if it lets everyone start at the same place. But of course, it's not always the case. Their IQ is partially determined by genes. So, it's complicated but fascinating.
Yeah, I'm adopted, and I have a specific feeling about it, mainly because of my own experience, and that's all I have to go on, obviously. Mm-hmm. But I feel like nature way outweighs nurture in my particular case.
How so? What is your evidence?
A black sheep of the family, completely opposite from everybody else in my family. Kind of feeling like a fish out of water most of the time.
Interesting.
Don't get me wrong. I love my family.
What are the differences?
I'm very outgoing. I'm very artistic. I'm loud. You may have noticed that.
Good for a podcast.
Yes,
yeah.
Yes.
And your family, they're very reserved and quiet.
Very conservative, very reserved, very kind of don't make waves, don't draw too much attention to yourself. And also there was the aspect of I've always been very into the arts, and I wanted to dance, and I don't like sports. My family was all about sports. Very disappointing from my dad that I was terrible at softball. Yeah, but so it was, I was talking about this the other day. There were certain habits that my family had that certainly I still have. So, right. I got that. I certainly got that nurture from them. But as far as personalities go, we couldn't be any more different. It's amazing.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not everybody has that experience. I know, but that was mine.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it is fascinating. And I have a story in my book about this guy. You might know this story about the guy who he had 9 siblings. He lived in the Midwest, and after their father died, they all took DNA tests and found out that they were all from different fathers.
Every single one.
It was like Maury Povich times 9. It was crazy.
I remember that.
And it was interesting to talk to him about, the similarities or not that he had with his, the father who raised him. Mm-hmm. And one thing I found very touching, and you just touched on it, you said, you love your family, is that his father
that was me.
Knew that none of the kids were his, was aware, but he still raised them, with loving kindness as if they were.
Wait, go back. Did you know did he know that they weren't his kids?
Apparently they did. And the evidence they have is that, for instance, he once introduced one of the sons to his biological father and said, "You two should talk. You have a lot in common."
Oh, wow.
And so they think that he knew. I mean, they don't know. It's a mystery. It could have been an arrangement. Could have been that the mom and dad, maybe he wasn't able to have kids.
Yeah, I was thinking that was what the case was.
Right.
Yeah. Interesting. And so maybe he just said, "Have at it." Make some babies.
Exactly.
Yeah, I must have. That was in the book, right?
Yeah, that was in the book.
Yeah, that must be where I heard that story. Oh, that's incredible.
I am very interested in the ethnic breakdown that you talk about a lot on the show.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because, I've been working on this for a while, so I took a lot of the different tests. Mm-hmm. And as you know, they don't always line up perfectly.
Right. Usually not.
And also, I thought what was interesting is the difference over time. Like I took, it was Ancestry DNA, and I took it right when it was first starting. Mm-hmm. And my first result, I was very excited because I had 14% Scandinavian DNA. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I'd always thought that I was almost completely Jewish. Mm-hmm. So for me, I was like, oh, it's nice to have a little variety. And I thought, maybe this will give me the impetus to go skiing and, I'll be tougher in the winter. But then over the years, about 4 years, it's gone down. And now it's, I don't know, like 1 or 2%.
Yeah.
And according to Cece and other folks, it's because Ancestry had a preponderance of Scandinavian clients. Oh. And that is one of the things they use in their algorithm. It's not the only thing. But one of the things they use is you're comparing your DNA to other clients' DNA in the database.
Right.
And so that is a theory of why it was skewed. And now, the more people who join and the broader their base, the more accurate they get.
That makes perfect sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have the Scandinavian thing too, that has gone up and down. I was very surprised at first when it came up. but came
And
to discover. Go ahead.
Right. I was gonna. What is your mix? I think I've heard it, but I forget. What is?
Okay, so right now, the latest one, basing on my research, the latest one seems the most accurate so far, certainly. So
Gotcha.
There you go. Okay, wait, where is my test? So while I'm looking for that, I found out in my research that my third great grandfather was from Norway. Even though he did not have a Norwegian name. Right. I've got a very small amount, but at least I know where it comes from.
Right. Because one test says that I am 90, I think I'm 97.5% Jewish, but 2.5% Arab Egyptian. Which I like because it's like the Middle East conflict in my body. I'm like, hopefully I can be at peace with myself, and maybe they can too. But I thought it was it's interesting because I don't know where. I don't have independent verification on my paper family tree of where that Egyptian Arab ancestor might have appeared.
Right. Okay, so now I am 61% England, Wales, and Northwestern Europe, which makes sense. 33% Ireland and Scotland, which also makes sense. And originally I was like 50% just Irish. And that was when I was searching for my biological father. And it was also when I very first started testing. So I took the ethnicity estimates literally. So I was searching for the name that I was told was his from Ireland, and I couldn't have been further off.
Well, what about your adopted family? What is their ethnic roots?
That unfortunately I didn't get to do DNA for either of them before they passed, but my father was definitely British from Yorkshire, and with a little bit of German. Now this is from the paper tree that I did for him. Right. And then my mom was actually born and raised in Montana, and she lived actually on a reservation. Or near a reservation. Yeah, well, near a reservation, I should say. But she never claimed Native American blood, but she sure looked like it. Like
really?
It was there. Yeah, she had jet black hair until the day she died. So,
I will tell you, one of the more interesting stories I ran across for the book was this woman who took a DNA test. She knew her mom's side of the family, and they were Irish. And she did not like her mom's side of the family. She didn't know anything about her dad. He had left early on. She didn't know his ethnicity. So she took a DNA test and found out she was about half Latino, Puerto Rican.
Okay.
And she embraced that side of her identity. She decided, she actually looked very Irish. She got red hair,
right,
and super pale skin. But she decided that she connected more with the Latino side of her family, and then to make it even more complicated, she had within that Latino, she had 7% or so of Taino genes, which is the Native American tribe that was in the Caribbean. And she decided that she identified with her Taino roots and started doing Taino rituals. And it's a fascinating thing, and also very complicated, because I can see both sides of it. I can see how much joy it gives her, and I think this will be a big, she's one of thousands that will embrace this new information. But also, it's going to be controversial because, she had people in the Native American community. It's like, what are you trying to pull? You're trying to co-opt our culture. So it's just one of these really complicated and fascinating results of this DNA revolution.
Yeah, it is complicated. And that's interesting that you said that. Didn't occur to me that the Native American people thought she, or may have thought that she was co-opting their culture.
Right. She said that she did get some pushback. I don't know how much, but
interesting.
I think that that'll continue. People, I just read some, I should have researched it more, but I just read about a man who had 4% African American DNA and was trying to.
I did a segment about that a couple weeks ago. Actually,
oh, you did?
About that exact gentleman.
I haven't heard that yet.
Yeah,
that is the story. I gotta listen. All right, after this, I'm going back to listen to that segment.
All right, I think it was 3 episodes ago. Something like that. From today. So yeah, I wonder what percentage would make Native American people comfortable with somebody identifying as that race.
Right. That is, I think you're not going to get a single answer. You
Probably
ask 100 different people, you're going to get 100 different answers.
Yeah.
And it's like, the whole idea of how fluid is ethnicity, how much, or versus how set it is.
Yeah.
That's just, it's wild. We've, just in the last few years, we've had the idea of fluid sexuality and fluid gender identity. And now it's going to become fluid ethnicity, and it's just going to be wild.
Yeah, I feel good about that, the ethnicity thing, though, because the less differences, physical differences we have between our, we feel about each other, I think the better we're going to get along. I would like to think that anyway.
Well, that was sort of the big impetus of my book, and the big thesis is that we're all a mix. And as Henry Louis Gates says, there's no such thing as racial purity. We're all a mix, and the more we acknowledge that, hopefully, like you say, the better we'll get along.
Right.
And there's actually some evidence of that. There's a study at Harvard a year ago that talked about, maybe 2 years ago now, they took Israelis and Palestinians, and then they told one group of them how closely they were genetically related. And then they took another group of Israelis and Palestinians and didn't. And the ones who had been told how closely they were related genetically treated each other with more kindness and were more open to negotiation in these tests that they ran. So that's a little evidence that this might actually, it's not going to solve everything, but it might be a nudge in the right direction.
I think so, and also I think this generation coming up, our kids are gonna make it a lot easier. Because I think they're very. My son, for example, has been. It's interesting when he was little and he was talking about somebody, and it was clearly a girl to us. He would say, "They think that they're," and I'm saying, "Why are you saying they?" And he said, "I don't know." I'm like, "It's a girl," and he'd be like, "So what?" And he instinctively just referred to people in non-gender specific way. And and it wasn't his, and that was before any of this. So,
that is interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I talked to some sociologists to say, at least for now, the intermarriage rate is just, increasing. And I see it in my own family. I actually married a Jewish woman, so I am sort of the exception to the rule in my in my generation. But my cousins and siblings, I've got a Peruvian brother-in-law and Korean Americans and Colombians. So I'm definitely seeing the mixture in my generation.
I feel like it just makes us so much richer in general, just as humans to experience different cultures.
I'm a fan.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, good talk.
We solved all the problems.
Yay, we did it. Okay, I think I'm going to let you go now, AJ.
Well, thank you. I had a lovely time, and I can't wait for the episode.
Yeah.
I will listen to it in half speed.
Okay.
So I can savor it.
It'll go on for 2 hours at that rate.
Exactly. That's my goal.
Okay. Well, AJ Jacobs, thank you so much for taking my call today and agreeing to be on the show. I'm very excited to let people know you're going to be here. And
thank you for having me. Can I plug my upcoming book that's just out?
Yes.
Thanks 1,000. And it's also about connection. I go around the world and I thank 1,000 people who helped make my cup of coffee.
Oh, my gosh.
So that's my new one. Thanks 1,000.
Genius. So it's called Thanks 1,000. What's the whole title, just for everybody to really get it?
Thanks 1,000, A Gratitude Journey.
Thanks so much. And I'm excited that the listeners get to discover you and discover your work. And
well, thank you.
Okay.
And, I look forward to listening to future episodes.
Appreciate it.
All right, great.
Okay.
Talk to you soon.
Okay, bye-bye. Okay. I hope you guys enjoyed listening to that interview as much as I enjoyed conducting it. AJ is clearly a delightful gentleman, and I want to thank him for taking the time to talk to me. One more time, his book that was just released is Thanks 1,000, A Gratitude Journey. He also has a book that I read called It's All Relative, Adventures Up and Down the World's Family Tree, which is a delight. You can find AJ on Twitter at AJ Jacobs, all lowercase. You can find me on Twitter at Jules Jackson with 2 O's. You can find the podcast at Cutoff Jeans Pod. You can find us on Facebook at the Cutoff Jeans Podcast. And you can send me a direct email, JulesJackson@cutoffjeans.com. If you'd like to be on the show, tell your story, have me tell your story, please reach out to me. I love talking to you guys, and I love that you guys enjoy listening to other people's stories as well. All right. On that note, I have one more thing to tell you. The truth is in your jeans.